Hi everyone, thanks again for joining today's session on dashboards. So today's session, we're going to be covering off dashboard gadgets. So we'll be taking a look at the different gadgets you have available within your accessplanit platform, some best use cases around different gadget types and how you can make the most of them. We'll then be looking at how we can extract reports to live on the dashboard. We'll then look at different options for sharing dashboards across the organization, and then some manager and trainer dashboard best practice as well. For this webinar, we have the Q&A and the chat function open in Zoom, in the Zoom webinar. So before we begin, if you'd just like to go into the chat and just put if you've used dashboards before, if you've been able to change dashboards, or basically how you're using dashboards in your accessplanit platform, just so we can get a feel for where everyone's up to and how different people are using dashboards within their organization. So there should be a chat option in the Zoom webinar. If you'd just like to click on that and just pop a bit of an overview in terms of what dashboards you're using and what type of information you want to view on the dashboard. Okay, just whilst waiting for those to come through. So typically what people will be looking to extract from the dashboard is information around courses and things about delegates, finances, that kind of thing is typically what people tend to look for on the dashboard. So they're the main ones we're going to be covering off. As we go through, I don't really use dashboards, fairly new, excellent. So brand new person into using the accessplanit platform. So that's absolutely fine. Hopefully you take some inspiration from today's session and go away and start building some good dashboards on the back of this. Not a problem. So as we go through today, what we'll be looking at, like I said, is mainly around course information, delegate information, financial. We'll also be looking at how we use the CRM side of the platform as well, opportunities, how they're pulled through to the dashboards as well. What I'll do is I'll just share my screen and you should be able to see in a second an accessplanit platform, one of our demo sites. If you can't see that, just let me know. So what we're looking at here is an example dashboard from a course coordinator. So my thinking on dashboards and the way we look at dashboards in accessplanit is really this should be giving you information that is pertinent to your role in the organization. So when you first log into the platform, the information that you'll be looking for, you'll be going off into the platform, into the different modules. If there's common information you look for on a regular basis, that kind of thing, we want to be able to reduce that administrative time, reduce that workload, and have it available to you straight from the dashboard. We'll just talk through these very quickly. Down the left-hand side here, we have what we call Statistic Gadgets. They serve a few purposes. They're able to highlight key information, so like the number of outstanding tasks, how many awards are about to expire, the number of upcoming courses, and so on. They also add a bit of color to the dashboard as well. It can be quite data heavy if you have lots of these data grid gadgets, these types of gadgets and these summary gadgets. So it adds a bit of life and a bit of color into the dashboard as well. As I just mentioned, these are our data grid gadgets. So these are much more trimmed down and narrowed down versions of the full data grids you see over here. Really useful just to provide that quick information. If your role and your organization is focused on how many spaces have we got left on each individual course for when people call up, they're really handy to have straight onto the dashboard. If you're concerned around things about profitability and income, again, you can have that information straight away at your fingertips. Again, it might be to do with payments, products and services, certification, lots of different types of gadgets, of different modules you can produce straight onto the dashboard. At the top left here, you'll have a drop down for the different types of dashboards you can create. So at the moment, we're looking at a course coordinator dashboard. It might be that we want to have something along the lines of finance to see the financial view of the platform. how many invoices are created, how many overdue, the number of outstanding invoices, and a breakdown of these. And you can have different types of dashboards as well. So rather than creating one huge dashboard with lots and lots of gadgets, you can create different types for different roles as well. And we'll talk about that a little bit later when we talk about sharing dashboards. What we're going to do first of all, I'll create a new area for a workshop dashboard, which is what we're in today. And now I'm creating a dashboard that's just for my user record. So this is just a personal dashboard. This won't be shared with any other administrators. This is just for me. And what you'll notice at the top right, we have the Add Gadget button up here. So what I'll do is I'll add a new gadget. We have quite a few gadgets available. We'll talk through some of the most commonly used ones in today's session. So Data Grid Gadget is one we'll focus on first. So that's allowing us to produce one of the data grids you'll typically find over here on the left-hand side, on the sidebar. We'll be able to put that onto our dashboard. We'll also be looking at report gadgets, statistics, and summaries. Statistics are those colourful gadgets we saw down the left-hand side, and the summary gadgets are very similar to data grids, but they can perform calculations. And we'll come on to that a little bit later on. But first, we're going to start with our data grid gadget. So when we add a new gadget onto the dashboard, we have this configuration message. So what we can do is left click on the hyperlink, and this is going to open up our data grid configuration. So the first option we have here at the top is a header. So giving our gadget a name, really useful because you want to have key information on there. So really useful, particularly if you're sharing gadgets so people know what they're looking at. So this one might be upcoming courses, a very common one. The auto refresh interval, what that means is how often will this gadget refresh if the dashboard is just sat idle. Every time you click dashboard on the left-hand side, the gadgets will naturally refresh. But if you're just leaving the dashboard on the screen, how often will those gadgets be refreshing in the background? Most people leave this disabled because they want to go into the dashboard and they can just hit refresh by clicking over here. The next one is auto height. So what you have in the gadgets is a number of rows that will appear. Let's say you've got 50 courses, therefore it could be 50 rows. If you want to create a gadget as a dashboard, should I say, as we saw earlier, with statistics on one side, data grids over here, the auto height would essentially bring it all the way down to the bottom. So it would resize the gadget. I really like a dashboard when everything's in the right place and it's all neatly squared away. I typically would leave that unticked. But if you're creating a dashboard where it has one gadget and you just want to see all the information, then you can tick auto height and the gadget will bring all the way down. If you leave it unticked, you can still scroll up and down. So you will still be able to see the information. It will just be neatly in its place. So once you've chosen the first three options, we then look for the module. So this is telling the gadget which module of the platform should it look for to pull through the information. Now, there's lots of different options here. Typically what we see is around about 6 or 7 modules are used on a regular basis. And these are things either to do with course dates, or you could be quite specific and look for class course or web course. People will have things on there for delegates. So again, we have a same process, delegate module, or we also have class delegates, web delegates, e-learning delegates, if you want to have a gadget that's specific for a course type. You also have things here for things like invoice, opportunities, if you're using the CRM side of the platform. There's lots of options in here. Typically, people will focus on course dates, invoicing opportunities, or delegates. That's the most common ones we get to see. So what we'll do is we'll start off with a class course module. And then underneath here, we get to choose our columns. So now what we're doing is saying which columns of that particular data grid that you can find on the left-hand side, which particular columns do we want to put on the dashboard? Now, best practice for this is always to have the minimum amount of information you want to see. The dashboard should be able to provide you information really quickly. You don't want to have to be sifting through information, trying to separate out what you do and don't need to see. So try and keep this just to the minimum of what you want, and that will make the dashboard more powerful. It's only going to be giving you key information. So for this one, I want to see the course name, the start date, the end date. I'm out to see the venue. I don't need to see course status. And what I want to do is see the income of the course as well. So really high level, just want to see the venue, where the course is taking place, the income. Actually, I'll add in the number of delegates we have booked on the course. So that's the basis of a gadget. What we can do here is hit save. And now this is pulling through all of our class courses we have in a platform. The start date, the end dates, the venues, income, and the delegates booked. And as you can see, I can scroll up and down to get as much information as I want. At the very bottom right of the gadget, I can left click and resize. So I can make this fit as neat as I like into the dashboard. And I can reduce it back down again if I need to. So this is where the auto height, if this was ticked, it would bring it all the way down to the bottom. So to edit the gadget once you've set it up, we'll choose the top right, this drop down here, and go into the settings. This opens back up the configuration. So if I tick auto height here, we'll see is the gadget now has reduced all the way down to the number of rows. I like to have things neat and tidy in the right place. So personally, I always leave it ticked, but again, completely up to you. What we would also probably do in gadgets, and most people will have this, is they'll have filters set up. So they don't want to see everything in the platform. They just want to see upcoming courses. So again, go back into settings. And then at the very bottom of the gadget, you have your filter options in here. So this is a way of reducing the number of rows to only see information that we want to see at that given time. So to see upcoming courses, what I would look at adding here is a filter for start date. And we do have a search bar at the top. So I only want to see courses that are going to start. I'll choose period in here. In the next 90 days. So these are very common. These are exactly the same types of filters you use from your data grids. You choose which column you want to filter by. You then choose the operator, which is how you're going to filter it. Courses between certain dates, for example, but the period keeps it nice and fluid because every time you go in there, it's always going to be the next 90 days. You don't need to keep setting the date parameters. And then I also don't want to see any cancelled courses. Just want to see the ones that are applicable. Course status is not in, cancelled. And then we have our upcoming courses. Now you can obviously get this information from the data grids. What's really handy about having this on the dashboard is when you first log in, if you're presented with this dashboard, you can click this button at the bottom here, open full data grid. And that will take you straight into the class course module with those filters already applied. So you can then see more information in here about that particular gadget, about those particular parameters. But on the dashboard, it's just giving you that snapshot information. If anyone has any questions around data grid gadgets, do feel free to add them into the chat or the Q&A. And what I'll do next, I'll just talk through a different type of data grid gadget. I'll be looking at delegates, a very common one that we see. But as I'm going through this, feel free to add any questions you have in the chat. There's no such thing as a silly question. So do feel free to add any questions you've got in the chat message. Whilst you're doing that, I'll open up a new gadget for data grid. And again, I'll configure this gadget using the settings. And what we want to do here is see the previous delegates we've had on courses. So what we'll do, we'll choose the Delegate Module. And again, I'm going to leave auto refresh disabled, and I'm not going to tick the auto height. And with the Delegate Module, I now get to see information about those delegates, the account they're from, the course they were booked onto, start date and end date, date registered and status of the delegate. What I can do is I can reorder the columns by dragging using those arrows on the right-hand side. I can add more columns here. And again, I can search for the available columns in the Delegates module, or I can remove using that red arrow. What I'm going to do is set a filter to only show our previous delegates, so anyone who was on a course that's in the past. And now we can see all of the delegates. Now, what you've probably noticed here is that the delegates are ordered in name order, alphabetical. Within the gadgets, you can choose how to sort the data grid columns. So there's blank columns here in the middle. If I just click on start dates, I can choose ascending or descending in order to sort the data grid columns. So now I've got a list of all my previous delegates and our upcoming courses here. And again, to resize the gadget, just drag this here. And that will allow us to move it up and down. Okay. So the next one we're going to look at is we'll look at a statistic gadget. So again, I'll choose gadget selection at the top right, and I want to add a statistic gadget in here. Now, the same process, we'll click the configure gadget hyperlink. And then what we'll do is we'll add one in here for overdue invoices. Look at a different module. It's really important when you name your statistic gadgets that it's very clear what the gadget is telling you, because it's just going to display a number for the statistic. So it's really important that header makes it perfectly clear exactly what information is being displayed, because you'll have no other clues otherwise. So again, we have auto refresh and auto height. With the statistic gadget, we can add some more information. We do get some more options. So we get to add an icon, which is just making it look a bit nicer on the dashboard. Doesn't have any impact on the data that's going to pull through. It's just purely visual. So we do have a finance gadget, and we can choose a color. So you can make it look quite nice, very colorful. You can choose it in line with your corporate branding, completely up to you, but you can make this quite a colorful part of the dashboard. Really handy for manager dashboards if you allow your clients to log in with the manager access, that you have that corporate branding pulling through, or with the trainers as well. It makes the whole platform feel like it's coming from your organization. It's all personalized. So again, really useful to make sure the colors are in line. For this one, we're going to choose our invoice module. And now, because this is a statistic gadget, we're looking at performing some calculations. So we get to choose the aggregate function. So we can either choose to have an average, a sum, a minimum and maximum on a particular column. So if we think about our invoice module, we could have an average amount of all of the invoices. So we could see an average amount of all the invoices. We could perform a sum of the outstanding invoices, or it could just be a simple count of how many invoices exist in the platform. So this would be looking at the invoice module and counting how many invoices we have, and then we can add our filters. So we only want to see outstanding invoices, so only invoices with the status of outstanding, and we can pull that through here. just using that method of using the average and the sum, what I'm going to do is create another statistic gadget just to see how many opportunities we have in the pipeline. This is a good example of how we can use that sum function. So forecast pipeline. Choose a calendar icon here, completely up to you what you pull through. What we can do is look at the opportunities module. And rather than an average or a count, we can do a sum on the value. So we can perform a sum on the value of the opportunities. And only opportunities that are in the correct stage. And now we can see how much we've got in that sales pipeline using the opportunities module. So when that's not performing a count, that's a sum of that individual column. So the final gadget we're going to take a look at is our summary gadget. As I'm going through this and you're digesting the data grid gadgets and the statistic gadgets, if you've got any questions at all, do feel free to pop them in the chat and I'll be happy to go through them with you today. What we'll do is we'll look at a summary gadget as our last gadget to go through. Now, a summary gadget brings together the functionality of the data grid gadget and the statistic gadget. It's able to provide information about courses, but also perform calculations. So what we'll do in this example is we might want to see how many delegates have ever booked on different types of courses. So we want to have almost like a mini report of our most popular courses. So what we'll do is we'll add a gadget in here and we'll look for the summary gadget, which is just towards the bottom. Again, same process, open up the configuration. Do is have popular courses. Again, we'll choose our course date module. That's absolutely fine. Now, what we want to do is choose the columns as we do up here. So we want to see the course name to start off with. And then as we add more columns in here, let's say we choose the delegates booked to see how many delegates have booked these courses. That's going to provide us a very basic level overview, similar to how we're looking up here on the top left. But on the right-hand side, anyone who's quite eagle-eyed will notice there's a difference in the columns. I actually get to choose whether I want to group it by or count, but because this is a numerical field, it's a delegates booked field, I get the same options as I had in the statistic gadget. I could perform a sum of the delegates booked. I also get to include things like subtotals. Then when I save this, straight away you can see we've got a list of all of our courses and in total, how many delegates have ever booked that course. Again, if I open this back up again, I might want to sort it to get almost like a league table of courses here. So now we've got a list of our most popular courses. You might want to do this by income, if that's your main focus, or fill rate, an average fill rate of courses. Basically, we can start to build this up. So we've got our delegates booked here. Might also want to have in our income, so we can keep building this out as well. Again, perform a sum on the income for each of these courses. So how many people are booked, and how much money has it brought in as well. So again, our summary gadgets can start to build this up in real time as well on the dashboard to give you that high level overview. So straight away, you can see anything you wanted to build reports on, you can almost replicate these into the dashboard. So that's our summary gadget, statistic gadget, and our data grid gadgets. They're the three most popular gadgets that we use to build up our dashboards. Again, any modules on the left-hand side here, you'll be able to build a gadget for. It's products and services, checkout, so open shopping baskets that people have yet to complete, product purchases, new accounts created, anything on the left-hand side here, you'll be able to put onto the dashboard. Okay, so the next part we'll look at then is sharing a dashboard. So once you've created a dashboard that you're happy with and you want to share it with the organization, up in administration, you have the dashboard section. Now this might be something you need to ask accessplanit to have enabled, because it's not given by default to every administrator, because some people might want to have dashboards that are quite private or things they want to share separately. So again, typically we would grant access to this. So if you've got any questions, either speak to your internal contact for accessplanit or contact your customer success manager. But in the dashboard section here, we have a list of every dashboard that's created. So you'll have lots of them that are created by internal staff. And we also have these shared dashboards as well. So if I just go to the one I've created here, I can see my username. So in here, I can see the dashboard that I've just created. I can also make amendments and edit the dashboard from here. But what I want to do is I want to share this dashboard with other people. So the way we do this in the details section is we choose who this dashboard is mapped to. So this is the workshop dashboard. I'll give it a name. Rather than being mapped to my user record, what I can do is I can share it. So anybody within the accessplanit account can have access to this dashboard. So any administrators in your account would then have access to the dashboard. It's also possible to share it with account groups as well, but more importantly, the role. So anybody with the role of training administrator could access this. This particular function is really important for sharing dashboards with managers and with trainers. So if you want to give a trainer a dashboard, you can create it in the dashboard area, and then you would map it, you would associate it to their My Teaching role. So you find the My Teaching role in here, and then you would associate it to them. And that's the same for manager access as well. Anyone with the role of manager would have the manager dashboard. The final thing to note on the sharing of dashboards, and this is something we see coming up a lot more, is people within an organization who are training administrators having different priorities. So what I mean by that is you might have a sales team, a finance team, operations, and they all want to have their own specific dashboard within their team. So what you can do in that instance is give those administrators a job role. So in their user record, if you associate a job role to an administrator for finance, or a job role to an administrator of sales or operations, they can then grant access to the correct dashboard. And so that means anyone with the correct role, they're all going to see the same information. So again, really good for standardizing what everyone's seeing. You know, everyone has access to the same data straight on the dashboard, and everyone can keep track of whether the KPIs or business performance, everyone is pointed in the right direction. So the job role is really handy to have, particularly if you've got quite a few administrators in the organization, to make sure different teams are getting information at the fingertips that will help them in their role. But then within the manager dashboard, just to talk on that for a second, if we add a new dashboard from here, we actually already have one created. So if we go into this dashboard, when you're creating manager dashboards, I'll just add a new gadget here. Again, focus on those three areas: data grid, summary, and statistic. When you're choosing the module, not every module is available to managers, because there's areas of the platform that they can't access due to their permissions. They just don't need to access. To make it easier, in brackets, we've put which modules are compatible with the manager access. So things like courses, delegates, delegate authorizations, invoicing, I think there's a few more as well, placeholders too, users and user rewards. That's what managers will be able to access. And when they do access it, they're not going to access all the data. It will just be information that they can see because of their permissions. So for manager access, we've made it really easy. So in brackets, we've got which modules are compatible with the manager access. Okay, so just to recap them, just going to head back to my dashboard. So we've added the 3 different types of gadgets that we use on a regular basis: upcoming courses, previous delegates. For the data grid gadgets, we also have the 2 statistic gadgets here, performing a sum of our outstanding pipeline, an account of our overdue invoices. And then we also have a summary table, which is performing a sum of the delegates booked on each course to give us a list of our most popular courses. And then also performing a sum for the income of each course as well to show financially which ones are our most popular courses. The final gadget we had today on our agenda was to look at report gadgets. So we have another option in here for reports. And what this will allow you to do is to pull through a report writer report straight onto the dashboard. So if there's a particular report that you look at on a regular basis, let's say we look at course viability for upcoming courses, we can hit save, and that will allow us to bring the report onto the dashboard. Now, just a bit of best practice here, because this does access Report Writer and it will load Report Writer each time, I would limit yourselves in terms of how many reports you put on the dashboard. The more you put on there, it might start to slow it down because it is generating reports in the background every time you click on dashboard. So I'd limit yourselves to 2, maybe 3 reports per dashboard, just to be on the safe side. Again, we can see here our Report Writer reports, and we can export it from here, change the filters and so on. Really handy if you've got any key reports that you look at. So just to go back to the agenda we had at the start, so we've looked at different dashboard gadgets that we use and across the various modules. We've also looked at how we add reports onto dashboards, sharing dashboards, and also the manager and trainer dashboard. If anyone has any questions on this, or is there anything you've been trying to do in the background whilst we've been going through this, I'd be more than happy to help talk through this on screen with you today. We do have some links in here as well. So on our help guide page at the very top of your platform, there is a help section. We've got some really good information there on how to create your own dashboards and also how to link reports on there as well. And the final thing to mention are upcoming workshops. So our next one is on productivity. It's on Thursday, the 21st of April at 11 a.m. Within that session, what we'll be going through is things like notes and tasks and how to really streamline processes with the platform to make the platform as productive as it possibly can be for you. And we also have some training events as well, which are paid for training events. These are 2-hour training sessions on workflow fundamentals, dashboard fundamentals, and new admin fundamentals as well. So going into a lot more detail in a training environment with our in-house trainer, Sarah. And if you want to book onto those, the website below, accessplanit.com/upcoming customer events. Feel free to go on there and make sure you book a slot in there as well, because they are booking up quite quickly. So if you'd like to book yourself onto a training event to learn more, these are 2-hour sessions that will be run with our trainer, Sarah. So if you've got any questions on that, do feel free to let me know, or do get in touch with your customer success manager. But unless there's any other questions that are going to come through, thank you very much for joining me today on today's workshop on dashboards. And if you've got any questions after this, do feel free to get in touch. Either call through our support team, or do feel free to drop your customer success manager an email. But thank you very much for taking the time out of your day today to join us. I hope you found that useful, and I look forward to seeing you soon.